making friends as an adult has an added element of being extra cringy. I wouldn't say there's like a courtship when it comes to friends. I think I've been on, at this point, 5 couples trips. They weren't looking for new friends, and it's very clear that that's the only value they see in me, and that's the only thing they want to talk to me about. Hello, and welcome back to the 4th episode of Soju with Sarah. I cannot believe we're already on the 4th episode. It feels like I just released the 1st episode yesterday, but we're already here. And before we get into the video, my name is Sarah. If you're new here and you haven't watched any of the episodes prior, I promise they're really good episodes if you want to catch up. But for those of you guys who have been with me since the 1st episode or found me in the middle, somewhere there, I just wanted to say thank you for all of the love and support and engagement. It is so much more than I would have expected for just starting off as a podcast. I just have so much love for you guys, and I love reading through all the comments. That's the one thing that I haven't had any time to get to, which is responding to comments. But I've been reading every one of them. I think right now I'm just going through that phase of figuring everything out and sorting through all the logistics of the process of creating podcasts and weekly podcast episodes. But I read every single comment and every single DM. I'm trying to find some time to squeeze in to actually respond to each and every one of you, but it means so much to me, so please don't stop. I love all of you guys, and I love the engagement and like the small community we're forming here. So thank you guys, and let's get on with our episode for today. For those of you guys who are wondering, we have our not soju mug out today, and that is for a specific reason, which is today we are not drinking soju for once. And this is actually a drink that I like. It's a little bit more milky. It is strawberry milk. I got this from the grocery store, not the Japanese mart that I always go to, but the brand on this is called Sangaria. And I think it's still Japanese though. It's like, it has Japanese on it, but it's strawberry milk. They also had like coffee milk, other types of milk at the grocery store, but I love strawberry milk. I also love banana milk, if you guys have ever tried banana milk, but maybe I'll have that on one day. I have a running list of now soju recipes that you guys have sent me, so I'm going to try to start picking from there too and getting ingredients for those soju recipes. But yeah, today is a non-alcoholic one just because it is the work week. It's after a long weekend, and I'm also going home tomorrow, so I want to make sure that I'm in the right headspace. So yeah, let's get started. So we're back to the little sit down format that we have. Last week we had my boyfriend on to talk about relationships. Today I wanted to talk about another form of relationships, which is friendships. And I wanted to talk about this because I actually get a lot of questions all the time about how to make friends in adulthood, what it's like making friends in the city. I get a lot of these questions, I think, because I do sometimes show just me living my life in New York City, hanging out with friends and meeting new people. And I think it's just such a like black box topic. Like, if no one really teaches you what the right way is to make friends when you're an adult, but it is so different than when you're a kid. It took a long time for me to realize that making friends as an adult is extremely difficult because not everyone is on the same page as you, and especially in terms of how many friends they want, how much time they have for friends, and who they want to associate with, and like types of people that they want to have around them. And I really clearly remember one of my earlier friends that I made in New York City when I moved back for the second time told me that they weren't looking for new friends. And I was just so surprised because I had never heard someone tell me that. And I was in my like early to mid 20s at that point when I first met this person. And if you're watching, hello. It was just so surprising to me because I never realized that people could be at full capacity with like how much friends they wanted to have and who they were already hanging out with. And I had this realization too because I think the expectation growing up when you're a kid and you're hanging around all these peers and students that you spend all your time with, you just expect that everyone's kind of in the same place with what they want in terms of the people that they hang out with, which is like someone probably around your age with similar hobbies and this and that. But nowadays there's so much more nuance as an adult with all the things that you can get out of friends, whether it's fun and enjoyment or comfort or purely like business, networking, career purposes. And so yeah, it's a really interesting and complex topic, and I think every year of my life, I've had new realizations about friendships. But I'm 27 now. I've been living in the city for 4 to 5 years. And I remember when I first moved to New York City in my early 20s, I never gave any thought to how I would make new friends. I kind of just assumed I would go into the city with the same people that I knew, because a lot of people from my college also filtered into New York City. So I kind of could expect people to be around. The biggest thing for me though was a lot of my close friends never ended up moving to the city. So a lot of them moved to other places like Philadelphia, California, Hawaii. And so I kind of ended up going into New York being a little bit lonelier than I expected. But I think I just didn't know how to go about meeting new people. So I kind of just stuck around people that I felt comfortable with, that I had gone to school with, or that I had known through someone else. And that made me build up a group of friends that I wouldn't say was so strong. It was just, I think at the time, my closest friends were like my roommate that I was living with, this coworker / peer from school, but that also ended up working at Google with me, that I would just grab lunch with once in a while. This other friend who's very social that would always like hit us up, and 2 other like work friends. But it was a very weird mix of people, because I feel like it was a situational friendship and everyone kind of didn't have other people to lean into in the city, and I was friends with them, and it was really fun. We did have a lot of experiences. We went out and like we experienced like party life and everything in New York, and I think it was fun. But at that time I would be meeting people too through those friends or through other situations like work and everything, and I didn't realize the value of following up, because that I think is the core way in the last couple of years that I've really learned to build friendships. Is I just was never the person to follow up, and most of the time I feel like most people aren't the person to follow up, and that just results in a lot of like missed opportunity and missed connections. But I would say my first year in New York City was kind of lonely, and then ironically the pandemic kind of hit, and so I was just alone, and I was at home, and I didn't really keep up with the friends that I had hung out with the couple months prior to the pandemic. And so I think a lot of my perception on friendship shifted after the pandemic, when I first moved back, and at that point I was like 24, and it was just a different scene for me. But before we dive into actually how to make friends and like that whole narrative and all that, I wanted to tap into why it is so hard making friends as an adult, because I think, at least for a lot of people, especially when you move to a new location and are experiencing change and new things in your life, having friends around you is so important, but at the same time it's so intimidating, because no one really has a guidebook on how to make friends. And so a lot of us just end up having to learn it through actions and like trials and tribulations and going through the motions of building social networks in a new place. And it's weird, because I think building friends as an adult is, first of all, very difficult, because the people you're pulling friends from now, like the pool of people that you can be friends with, is just so much more diverse and so much more vast. Because growing up, a lot of us go to school, and so we end up being around people that are either the same age or same like age range. And so you can kind of, like feel out the different things that everyone's going through. I remember when I first joined college, we all started off with this program called Outdoor Action or Community Action. And they basically send you on this like camping trip for a whole week, or this community service trip for a whole week. And you do that. That's like your first foray into college life. They put you in little groups and you spend a whole week with those people. You come back onto campus, and basically the topic that everyone would be talking about when you first meet people would be like, oh, what did you do for your OA or CA? Like, what did you do for your camping trip? Where did you go? Like, how was that? And so it's really easy to gauge and estimate what people would want to talk about, because everyone's going through the same activities and the same motions and the same experiences. And I also think because everyone's new to a new environment, everyone's also pretty open to making friends. And I think similarly, when you're in primary school or middle school or high school, there's a lot of similar circumstances that you're put into where you just automatically make friends by default. Like, there's no question of like, who can I choose to be my friend? Obviously, when you're a kid, you do choose your friends, like you do select out of the pool of people, but it's still a pretty limited selection of people. I remember the friends that I would make would always just be the friends that I was seeing the most often and closest to in my classes. Actually, a lot of friendship formed out of just doing homework together. So I think there's just common threads that keep people connected throughout your life when you're a kid. But then when you're in your 20s and you're an adult, you're suddenly thrown into this environment where you have absolutely no idea what types of people you'll be coming into contact with. And I think this is true the older you get, because when I first moved to the city, I think I was more often meeting just other new grads, and circumstantially, I think other new grads would just be at the same parties and the same places that I would go to. But maybe within the last like 2 or 3 years, I think I've just come into contact with people in more like walks of life. So making friends feels a lot less homogenous, if that makes sense. Like there's no shared extracurricular. Well, sometimes there is if you're joining like a running club or something like that. But other times if you're at like a mixer event and you're just meeting someone for the first time, there's no like shared soccer practice that you're going to, or like class or teacher that you can kind of talk about. And this is something that I think is really nice too, which is that you can be also friends with people who are a lot older or young. I guess like when you're in your 20s, maybe not so much younger, but like you can now have friends that are like 30 years older. I think I have a few content creator friends who are a lot more older than I am. I do have a lot of friends in their 30s, and there's just a lot more like ability to make friends in different age brackets, demographics, and walks of life. And funny enough, I think those types of friends come from having like a shared connection. So James, I don't know if I should be like talking about his friend life because I want to bring him on later for like a little Juices with James segment, but he has some friends or people that he's met through playing basketball, and they will meet constantly at the same courts and they kind of just like exchange numbers. But some of those guys are like in their 40s, 50s, and they've like invited us to their cookouts and their backyard barbecues. And it's really cool because when you're younger, you kind of don't see yourself hanging around people who are much older. But I feel like as an adult, there's not this weird stigma around being close to people who are a lot older. And even just like random situations kind of bring people together. Like I had one time I was walking down the street and I was dressed nice. Like I think I was dressed nice, but some guy just randomly came up to me and was like, "Oh, your outfit's so cool." And we chatted a little, exchanged socials. I think he was a little bit older, but I just think as an adult, there's more like random one-off opportunities like that as a kid you don't really have to kind of like build new relationships and new friendships. But the funny thing about that is nowadays, I think when I meet people, it's all social media based. So like the way you build a connection is actually just exchange your social media with someone. And then you have this weird friendship where it's kind of more social media focused, or sometimes it's like more social media focused. And then your dynamic is basically responding to each other's stories. You kind of are just like in the loop on their life by seeing their posts and their stories instead of actually seeing them every single day through like classes or things like that. But I'm not particularly mad about that type of friendship. Like social media friendships, I also do respect and appreciate, but it is just very different than how friendships used to be growing up. But not to ramble, I also think making friends as an adult has an added element of being extra cringy because you really got to put yourself out there. And I don't think that's something that I really expected going into my 20s, which is that you don't get friends for free anymore. You kind of have to make an active, conscious effort to reach out to people. More often than not, I find that for me to build a new friendship, I can't just like wait around for people to reach out to me and ask me to get coffee and things like that. Obviously, it happens sometimes, but if I meet someone in a circumstance, like a one-off connection, I have to be the person that like reaches out and follows up. And that's the power of following up. I think following up is such a powerful skill that is really scary, I want to say, because when I was in school and making friends for the first time, I was really, really shy in especially high school. I don't think I was as shy in elementary school and middle school. Like I could just talk to the person next to me, and I actually talked so much, like to the point where the teacher had to call my parents. But for some reason I became like more introverted when I hit high school. And so I really never learned the skill of putting myself out there to make friends. And I think that's something that I really actively tried to do when I entered college. But as an adult now, you have to follow up. Like if you meet someone cool and you exchange socials, most likely it'll not transform into any pivotal friendship unless you make it that way, and unless you follow up and you're like, "Hey, it was so nice meeting you. We should grab coffee sometime," which I think is my hack. I don't even know if that's a hack. I think most people do that. It's just like a habit that's built into people. But I really, really think nowadays if I meet someone that's super cool, my whole thing is I want to just be the person that messages and says, hey, it was so great meeting you. Let's get coffee. I also think this is necessary because in other points in your life, I think it's much easier to just run into people. But when you're an adult, you don't just run into people anymore, if that makes sense. The city is so big. The times that I run into people, I can probably count on one hand. It's just very, very limited. Whereas in college, you'd be on the same campus, you'd probably run into each other at parties or different events, the dining hall, places like that. And I think that's actually where a lot of my friendships in college formed, which is I would just keep running into people and then friendships would naturally progress that way. That doesn't happen as often anymore. I will say the only place that still happens is actually the workspace. So I have a few like work friends, and I think work friends are very good friends to have, especially if you want to enjoy your like work experience. I think work friends can really like make or break your work life. But in every other situation, unless you have a hobby or something tying you to a location, it is so hard to maintain constant communication with people, which is why I do think having social media is actually helpful, even though it reduces the friendship sometimes to like a screen, if that makes sense. But in addition to just like messaging people and following up, a lot of the cringe I feel like also comes from having to be more vocal and like put in the effort. There's not really, I wouldn't say there's like a courtship when it comes to friends, but it's much easier to act cool when you don't have to be so public with your like efforts. But nowadays when I have parties or things that I want to invite people to, I have to actively like directly message them, which is really different, instead of just in passing being like, hey, come to my dorm like tomorrow night for a pregame, that kind of stuff. Like I remember when I first started hosting parties, I had this rooftop when I moved back to New York with my roommate, and it was really, really big. So I would love to host big parties. And I think that was like my avenue for new friends. If I really wanted to develop a friendship with someone and I just met them recently, I invited them to my parties. I feel like most people had a good time, which is also why I would host them. I just wanted to connect other people too. But I would always get really in my head about direct messaging them, especially if I hadn't had like long strings of messages with them. But it's such an active effort now. Like you have to just put yourself out there. And if people don't open your messages, then you feel weird about it. And there's so many ways and avenues you can just get in your head about it. But really, everything is just so public. And the other thing that I've noticed people doing nowadays, which I might start doing at some point, I think when I have more events I want to go to or people that I want to bring to places or just like things that I want to do, is posting on social media to like close friends or maybe sometimes to the public on like, hey, I have time this Saturday. Does anyone want to hang out? And I've seen a couple of people do that on social media, which is not something I've ever done before. But I find that that's really cute too, because it's more impromptu. Like there's this whole concept that I forgot where I heard it from. Most likely it's from TikTok, because I think I find a lot of good ironically, I find a lot of valuable content on TikTok. So on TikTok, I saw this girl kind of evaluating why adult friendships feel dry and rigid and just so much less fun and engaged. And she did this really good explanation of why as an adult, you now have to like plan all your gatherings and you have to plan events that you're going to. You have to pencil it in and schedule it around your calendar, and nothing feels impromptu anymore. And that's like the beauty of when you're a kid or when you're in college. You can kind of just last minute just text someone and be like, hey, do you want to meet at this place on campus in 5 minutes to go get some free food? And there's just a lot more situations where you can just very last minute hang out with someone that you no longer get as an adult. And I think the sentiment was to bring back that sense of like funness in a relationship. It's necessary to have impromptu interactions like that, and a lot of friendship kind of dries out because everyone is so busy and needs to work around their schedules and like be more calculated in the time that they can give to their friends. And so I really, really do like the idea of just like posting on my social that I'm free this day and just see who wants to hang out. The other thing is friends nowadays as an adult, I also realize you want friends that will make time for you. And I'm kind of a culprit, or is that the right word? I kind of feel bad sometimes as a friend because I don't always have the time to make for people. And so I know if I had more time, I would be better friends. But it's also really important to have friends that will show up like if you're free on a Saturday and all that. So yeah, that was a random like side thought. But I think the last reason that making friends as an adult is so cringy is because you actually have to put in effort. I feel like effort can come in different forms, whether it's like driving somewhere or meeting in the middle just to meet up with them, because sometimes you're really far from your friends. Planning activities or even just accommodating things like partners and kids. I think I've been on, at this point, 5 couples trips, and they've all been so different. But the dynamic definitely shifts because your friendships with people aren't one-on-one anymore. It feels like there's a lot more external elements to factor into a friendship that wasn't there in the past. So I think it's really interesting. I think people get more complex as they get older, and because of that, friendships also get more complex. But that kind of leads us into how to actually make friends, because I think it's been a learning process for me, as I'm sure it's been for a lot of people. But in your 20s, every year is kind of different in terms of the types of friends you have, which, on a tangent, let's first talk about the types of friends that you have, because that I think is really, really interesting. So I think as an adult, there's different types of friends, and it's really interesting to acknowledge this because they're all so different categories, or they're all such different categories. So the first one that I want to mention is the fun friends, because this is like the category of friends that I would always flock to when I first moved to New York City, because I think when you're in your early 20s, all you care about is having fun and just like meeting cool people. And so fun friends are kind of the friends that you just party with, friends you'll drink with, the friends who have a lot of fun, are very extroverted, and just make you feel good, make you feel young, make you feel like you're having a lot of fun. But I think fun friends don't always overlap with the other friends that are very important. So I think the second one, not in order of importance, but just in order of the ones I'm thinking about, is hobby friends. Hobby friends or passion friends, friends who you can share hobbies with and who kind of understand what you're interested in. Because explaining interest to adult friends is different than explaining interest to adult friends when you're a kid. Not everyone has the time to like try out your hobby, even if you talk about it all the time. But these are the friends that you'll indulge in your hobbies and activities and creative interests and all that with. And for me, it's pottery. I know for James, he plays basketball a lot, so he really has some core like basketball friends that he only ever just plays basketball with them. I think hobby friends can also convert to other types of friends, but hobby friends are also the people that you go to when you want to do a specific hobby. I feel like friends that you make in like book clubs or run clubs can also fall into hobby friends. But then there's the type of friend that maybe hobby friends aren't, which is the friend that's going to be there for you no matter what. And I feel like these are just more the personal friends that understand you and know who you are. I don't really know if there's a good way to categorize it, but these are much more rare, because on top of knowing your life situation and the type of person that you are, I think these friends also have to have time and care for you, and that's not always something that you'll find in everyone. I think when you're an adult, you have a really clear sense of who really, really cares and who's around for other reasons. There's no like black or white and good or bad, but yeah, I think not everyone can be the type of friend that's always there for you, me included. So the next category of friends is what I consider childhood friends or friends from the past. So these are friends that aren't necessarily so actively involved in your present state. You had a strong connection with them as a kid or as you were in certain phases in your life. And so I feel like these are the friends that you'll sit down with and just recall different memories with. And so it's more of a comforting friendship and less of a very presently rooted friendship, if that makes sense. And I feel like I have a lot of these in college friends currently, because college was now like 5 years ago. And so some of those friends I haven't seen in a while, but when we see each other at weddings or reunions, there's just a lot to dig up. And I feel like there's some level of these types of friends make you feel at home. Childhood friendships, I think, fall under this a lot, because childhood was so long ago that sometimes it's hard to just be on the same page as people with childhood friends, but there's so much like fondness for the experiences that you had as a kid that is what kind of keeps you tethered. And the last group, which is the most controversial and the group that I still am learning how to navigate, is network friends, because this is very new. Like, this is a new-ish type of friend that I don't think I had much of an understanding of before I became an adult, but these are the friends that usually have a resource. And I find that like network friends sometimes have overlap with other types of actually more often than not, network friends also have overlap with something else. So they might just also be a hobby friend that you run with sometimes, or a fun friend that you also go out and party with. But network friends are the types of people that you can count on to help you with different opportunities that might also have resources that might benefit you. I will say this type of friendship in my personal experience has been a little more transactional. So I've felt like I also needed to provide resources or opportunities to retain that friendship. But I wanted to talk about this a little bit later. So let's hold on to like the networking friend thought. We will dive into it very shortly. But that is my list of what I think adult friendships are like. If I missed a category, let me know, because I definitely know there are other categories. But my current state in life, I feel like friends can kind of fall into one or two, or like a mix of those categories. It is actually really hard to find friends that fit into all categories. And that's okay. I don't think we should expect friends to be in all those categories. But yeah, I also don't want to promote the idea of just friends being in different categories. I think it's just more of a passive thought that I've noticed that friends kind of fit different parts of my life now. For example, I used to really want to go out a lot more, and so the party friends and the fun friends would be the people that I hang out with more. But I also sometimes talk with friends now, and we have this realization that some friends really just are growing out of this party phase, and it's a lot harder to keep close contact with other friends who only want to just party and drink all the time. It's interesting to see the types of situations that you'll end up in with friends. For me personally, I think I focused a lot of my early 20s on just the fun friends, the party friends, and some of the hobby friends. I really didn't have a concept of like other types of friendships. I kind of just wanted to be friends with people that wanted to do the same things as me. I don't think that's flawed at all, but I think there's a lot of gaps that's left to be filled too, because at a certain point I also felt like party friends weren't the ones that I could go to if something happened, and they wouldn't always be there if I got into an accident or if I went through a breakup. Like every friend fits different needs. But I wanted to dive into how to actually make friends, because I think that's the big question that I've had to really think about the last couple of years in my 20s. But I think for me, the easiest way that I've gone about making friends is actually through other friends. And so I remember very clearly when I first moved back to New York in like 2021, I actually met a lot of friends through this one friend that I had made. And I had met her a couple of years ago. We never really became like friends until I got back into the city. And she introduced me to so many cool people, and I'm also forever indebted and grateful to her. She's such a like caring person, and also very extroverted and just very like giving too. And if you're watching this, you know who you are. Hello. But yeah, I felt like making friends through mutual friends was very valuable, not just because it was quote unquote easy, like you kind of get the in with someone new and you can build a relationship off of knowing someone together, but it's also that it's very self-selecting too. Like if you're friends with someone already who has certain interests and is a certain type of person, it's more curated when they introduce you to their friends, because they're also probably of a similar type, probably are pretty chill and cool if you think that your friend is chill and cool. And it's more often easier to find alignment with new people when you meet through another friend, because it's more self-selecting. So I think I made a lot of my friends through mutual friends, and I really tried to be present for a lot of things because I wanted to be a good friend when I first moved to New York City. I still want to be a good friend. I just think it's a lot harder now with all the things I'm doing with my life. But when I first moved to New York City, I was always saying yes to events and parties and places and things. And I felt like I met a lot of friends through just mutual friends and mutual friends at specifically these events that I would go to. But the second way of making friends, I would say, which is more of the diverse way of making friends or making diverse friends, is actually through passions and hobbies and experiences. And I think for me, that comes in the form of like pottery and content creation, but also just anything creative. I think when I first moved to the city, I would really gravitate towards people who did creative stuff on the side, because I felt like I had a lot of respect and appreciation for that. And so whenever I met someone who's doing something super cool and very hands-on, I would be so interested and would love just talking to them about their craft. But also through hobbies like my pottery currently, I've been able to make some friends who also do pottery, whether through classes or ironically, a lot of the times my friend will know someone that also does pottery and try to connect us because they think that we are very similar because we love pottery. So I think having hobbies is a very valuable way to meet more diverse people. Something that I've been wanting to do hobby-wise is actually getting into running. And those of you guys who watch me on my main channel know I'm in like this fitness journey right now. So I'm trying to get more fit and be more focused on that. But I've been really grappling with the desire to start running, even though I absolutely hate, like I literally feel like I'm going to die whenever I'm running. But I've been thinking about it a lot more because I love the social element of it. I feel like in New York City, it's been more and more popular to have like run clubs. And I really want to get into it just so that I can have a shared hobby, because a lot of my friends do run too, but my boyfriend also runs. And so I would love to just like have a nice little jog and run with people, but I need to build up my stamina. But I do know that a lot of people have run clubs and meet friends through run clubs, and it's a very social thing. So yeah, that is on my agenda and on my mind lately. Also on the topic of content creation events, I know in the last couple of videos, if you've watched it, I have my opinions on content creators and content creator culture and like those events. I am slightly negative about that space, but I do think that there have been events in the past that I actually have met very kind and cool people. And I think the ones where it actually happens is when the brand makes an active effort to have you guys do activities in groups or like meet other people. And there was one that I had gone to a couple of years ago, hosted by YouTube. I remember it was like a 3-day event and they had all these different activities for us to do, little sustainability engagement sections. It was a sustainability focused event, but we would do little projects, try to film content with new people. And it was so much more engaging and such a great avenue to meeting people that I felt like in certain settings, having those events that you go to is a great way to meet people. So just wanted to flag that and put that there because I think being a content creator has been also a great way to meet people who have similar hobbies and passions, so content creation being that. But that kind of leads us into the next way to make friends. This is not exactly a where to meet friends, but a what brings you together to new friends. I don't know if that wording made sense, but I think a way of meeting friends is just through shared connections. So you can meet someone in any situation, but if there's a shared similarity that kind of like brings you together, I feel like that is so meaningful, because a lot of the time at creator events, if I meet like a tech content creator girly, I feel like off the bat we will hit it off because we understand the schedule, we understand the full-time job, we understand the finances, we understand like so much off the bat because of a shared connection. And so I think that's the type of friend that you can kind of rely on understanding your situation or a part of your situation, that I feel like those types of friendships that form are very meaningful.
Intermission
time. All right, today for intermission, I went to the Japanese mart once again and bought these tofu skewers, and I have James to try it with me because we're both kind of hungry and it's past midnight now. But
you didn't even introduce me.
Oh, sorry. This is James.
Although, if you don't know me by now, what are you doing? Go back and watch the first 3 episodes. I'm in all of them. So, hi. Good to be back.
The skewers today are, I think, spicy flavored. I actually don't know if I have much more to say about it. It was $2.99 though. All right, let's try it.
Our producer is wanting to taste test it, I think, just for safety, food safety.
So we might have to just do this whole segment with Moose in front of the camera.
So sorry to all the audio or video listeners.
Never mind. This is the skewer.
Skewer?
Skewer.
The skewer?
This is the skewer. It is extremely oily, but it smells really good. It smells like chili oil, spicy chili oil. So let's taste this. Cheers.
Bon appetit. It's quite good, actually. Really spicy.
Actually, this is really good.
This is Japanese. Tastes very like Szechuan.
Wow. I think the spice level is like a 9 out of 10 for me.
Really?
Yeah. Is yours not that spicy?
Maybe you got like a pepper thing. Mine was pretty spicy, but not a 9 out of 10. What do you rate it overall?
What do I rate it overall? I think 9 out of 10. This is pretty good. Also because I'm hungry right now and it's late.
Very good. I think 9 out of 10 for me too. Juices with James.
We're back with the Juices with James segment. I don't know if you guys should expect James to be on every single episode, but so far he has been.
Sorry to everyone who has to look at my face and listen to my voice every episode, but for now you're stuck with me. So
I wanted to say, first of all, thank you for last episode. We spent a lot of time filming it, and I'm glad we could share a little bit more about our relationship. And I think it was a great episode, so you guys should go listen. But thank you for being on it.
Yeah, there's a labor of love about our love for everyone to now know about our entire lives.
Yeah.
On the internet.
So for Juices with James today, the topic is making friends in adulthood and in your 20s. So I wanted to ask, how have you found making friends in your 20s, and how have you made your friends in your 20s?
So I would say I've had ebbs and flows of making friends, and a lot of my longer term friendships, I guess inherently it just makes sense, but they're from high school and college. So, you know, a lot of my early friendships from like elementary through middle school through high school have been the ones that I've kept up since then. But that's not like, you know, you just make friends as a kid, and it's kind of natural. You don't really think about how to do it necessarily. I mean, some people do, obviously. I think back then it was just, you know, whatever you're interested in. If your friends are interested in it, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
And I think guys in general just tend to make friendships based off of interests. So for me, my entire life, I think I heard you mention this in the podcast earlier. It's like I grew up playing basketball, and that's like one of the things I enjoy doing. So I've made a lot of friends through that. A lot of my like college social life came from just going to the gym and playing pickup basketball a lot. And over time, I just like the frequent interactions and like playing pickup and getting added to like a basketball group chat and just doing that stuff. You know, first you just start playing basketball, and then it ends up like after you play, then you're like, oh, you want to go like get some food after or something. And then over time, you just end up becoming friends with these people. And so that's been a big way, is like through shared activities, which I think it's definitely more of a guy thing. But I think in adulthood, you kind of have to do that too, like regardless of if you're a guy or girl. Or
for context, James has very, very strong childhood friend groups and college friend groups. Like we now do like couples trips because everyone's in a relationship, but we do couples trips with his high school friends, and we've been to many different locations and everyone's groomsmen's and each other's weddings and everything, which is really cute. But your college friend group also tries to hang out so frequently, which is great.
I would say newer friends since moving to New York have been some of them through you, just because I think you've been meeting a lot of people over the last few years. Gotten to meet a lot of cool people through that, which I've really appreciated, and thank you for letting me be friends with these people. I would say for a while I like struggled to feel like I was meeting people in a meaningful way the last 3 years, or 2 of the last 3 years I should say. The last year I feel like I've gotten to like more like hit my stride with deepening connections, or at least feeling like I know people and I'm friendly with them and don't feel uncomfortable in different social situations. But for a long time I did feel like I was meeting a ton of people. I'd like get their Instagram contact and be proactive about that, but I wouldn't necessarily like convert it to anything else, just because, you know, even to like coffee chat someone after you meet them at a party, I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of awkward at that. So I think for me, especially because I think I don't make the best first impression, I tend to be more of like a slow burn. And so it just takes time for me to like be in a place for a while, and people start to remember who I am. And then like over time they realize, oh, he's actually pretty cool. Like whatever first time I met him when he was nervous and awkward, like that's not representative of him necessarily. I think that's usually been required for me in any given context that I've been in. Like the time factor for me to actually develop relationships and friendships and community.
Do you have any hot takes on friendships?
My hot take is don't build friendships on being a good listener. That's my hot take.
Oh.
Don't set yourself up to be the listener friend to your friends, because I think that basically sets you up to just cater to your friends and not be your own person who has needs and says things about themselves and divulges information. Yeah.
I have an amendment to that. I think you can be a good listener, but also set the expectation that you also need to be listened.
Yeah, with all hot takes, it's like caveat, right?
Yeah.
This should only speak to a specific demographic, which includes me, which is how I thought of it. If you're a person who tends to not like ask questions to other people and catch yourself like talking about yourself a lot, this hot take is not for you. Like you should be listening. You should be a better listener to your friends. That's something you should work on too.
Yeah.
For me, I'm way on the other side of the spectrum, where I have in the past built friendships too much on just like being a good listener,
Yeah.
where I realized like a lot of my friendships, I'm like, they don't even know anything about me
Yeah.
actually. Like whenever I start hanging out with people from my past, I've realized some of them, they'll be talking forever, like the entire conversation. I will ask them different questions about like, 3 years ago they told me this, like I'm gonna bring it back up because I remember it, and
You're
I'll be
really
like,
good at that.
what happened to your cousin who like broke their knee at the wedding? Like, are they better now? Because you just mentioned them again. Like, are they running again?
Yeah.
So I'll mention stuff like that, and then later I'll like say something, and then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you have siblings?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have 3 siblings. I've told you like about my 3 siblings before, but they don't remember anything."
Yeah.
And so I've realized the reason I have been such a good listener throughout my life to friends is because I did care a lot about making friends as a middle schooler, despite what I said earlier about like it being more natural to be make friends as a kid, which it is, but I did care about it a lot. So I remember searching online, how do you like make friends, you know?
Yeah.
And the number one thing was ask questions about themselves, because people love to talk about themselves.
Oh.
So that stuck with me.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, even if I feel awkward or nervous sometimes, I don't necessarily have to feel nervous about saying something or like having something interesting to say about myself. Let me just ask them questions about themselves and let them talk, and like whatever, they love talking about themselves, right? That's what I remembered. So that's how I predicated a lot of my social interactions from that point forward. Yeah, I did make a lot of good friends, genuine friends throughout high school, just through like exposure and like slow burn and like talking to them a lot over time. But I think especially in college, what I realized is through this tactic of making friends by being a good listener, I just accumulated a lot of friends where I know so much about them and I've given them great advice and I remember all these different things about them, but then at the end of the day they don't remember anything about me. I mean, they remember stuff about me. Yeah. But it's like kind of painful watching them try to remember something. I just had that like light bulb moment of, these aren't really my friends. I'm just like their therapist sometimes.
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of actually a lot of people tell me that you're a good listener. Like just literally to me like, James is so good at listening. And I'm like,
no more.
Yeah, no more.
Not me.
He is not gonna listen to you.
His ears are closed to anyone and everyone.
What about me?
Except for you and Moose. And close friends. And people who are genuinely interested in talking to me.
That's a great tip, which is, I guess, like that revolves around the discussion of what are some green flags when looking for friends. Because as an adult, the other thing is you shouldn't just accept everyone as your friend now, because your time is valuable. You have like more stuff going on. And I think it's harder to figure out who's the right friend for you. So I guess a red flag is if they don't listen to you and they only care about talking about themselves.
Yeah, and they don't ask you questions.
Yeah. Do you have any hacks for making friends besides basketball?
So I think a hack, and I'm biased because I now post on social media. Yeah. Is I think you should be really public about the things that you're interested in. Like, and that's not necessarily that you have to post content all the time about it, or even post content in general. But even if you're talking to people, you should not be ashamed about sharing what you're interested in. You should be like, I love this subject, like.
Yeah, passionate. And
you know, maybe they won't be interested in it, but at least like mention it. They might latch onto it, or they might try to connect you with someone they know. It will eventually lead you more to people that you're more like and want to interact with because they have the same interests as you. There's a book that I read part of, at least, that's called Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. Yeah. And one of the points that he makes is like, you need to show your work to people, and if you're not posting what you're doing somewhere or like sharing it, it like basically doesn't exist. Yeah. I mean, it exists, but what's the point if your creation doesn't impact people and you don't get people to like react to the things that you're doing? Because that's the ultimate point of things, right? That you're interested in or want to create or whatever. That's
actually such a good hack, because I also used to be very shy about sharing my stuff, especially my videos when I was first starting off. Recently, in the last 2 years, I've noticed that it has led me to new friends. So the whole pottery thing, I've been so vocal about loving pottery. I've met other friends through like our mutual friend who kind of just introduced me to them because she knows how much I love pottery. And so that's how I've made some of my pottery friends, it's just brilliant.
I know we've mentioned like I post more fashion content online now, and there's like a bit more numbers on it than like I used to have like last year when I was posting early last year.
Which congrats, you've grown so much and you've done so well.
Thank you. Go check out my account, Jung Garments. Thank you. And a lot of the growth is Thanks to Sarah's wonderful guidance. Thank you. Back then, I felt so sheepish about posting stuff. People don't really care. I feel like I'm putting myself out there and I just kind of look dumb because, you know, there's no numbers behind it.
Yeah.
But even back then, like the small numbers I was doing on some reels allowed me to, like, I had a backlog and like a demonstrated interest in like fashion and like making stuff. So then sometimes I'd like follow people and then they'd follow me back and they're interested in fashion. They post about it. They know other people who are like bigger and stuff like that, which doesn't necessarily matter, but it made me feel like, oh, I'm like getting more into this community.
Right. Like you're feeling accepted and like acknowledged, right?
Exactly. And coming from like the school that we come from, just more preppy, I guess, there's not a lot of people into fashion. So like having that community online just from me basically telling people that I'm interested in this was really helpful. And even some of the mutuals that I formed back then, I'm still mutuals with them and they are doing their own stuff too, and they know other people that they're like growing their network in fashion too. So it's really cool to just see where that progresses. And had I just been so sheepish about it back then that I just stopped posting completely or didn't post at all, I think that really would have hampered my progress now to the point of, you know, I just wouldn't have been able to get the ball rolling and like start to meet people and talk about it. That's the hack, is just be more open about what you're interested in with everyone.
And also be yourself.
Kind of cliche, but
it's true.
It's always true.
Yeah. I used to, whenever I would meet someone, I would try to be very bubbly and very loud and extroverted. I am bubbly sometimes, but not all the time. And I realized that it's a weird change for people to realize that I'm also pretty like calm and collected. And so I've been trying to be more like just who I am on camera and also in my vlogs to people. I think people pick up on it, that that's my like natural state.
So you do match energy.
I do match energy, but I realize that matching energy isn't a long-term solution for being friends with people.
I think I've heard the term like social chameleon before. Have you? How do you feel like you've been that?
Oh yeah. I think that's why making friends was exhausting for me when I first moved here, because I tried too much to be a social chameleon. And so that took a lot out of me to kind of like match everyone's energy and try to always be like really chill and down to earth and like, you know, super down for things, or like super excited and super giddy and super happy. I think this also comes with confidence, just being able to feel more comfortable being who you are in front of other people. It's a learning lesson, and I feel like I'm still growing into that. Yeah,
I think I used to view myself as a social chameleon as well. And I remember seeing a tweet in high school that was like, I don't know if it wasn't like this corny, it was like, retweet if you are the type of kid to be friends with both the jocks and the nerds and the chess kids and then the band kids, and like you're cool with everyone.
You're that kid.
I like fancied myself that. I was like, I think I'm that. I'm friends with different types of people too.
Your school was literally 50 kids.
Yeah, it's like because there's no competition to get into anything, one kid is everything. Like there's one kid doing band and athletics and
like, jog.
Yeah, so it's like I'm friends with one person. I'm like, I'm friends with everyone.
You knock out 10 birds, one stone.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually so funny now that you say that. But I did think of myself that way because there's like the more jock kids and then the more like music inclined kids that I was friends with. But yeah, I think the more I think about it now, some people are just that outgoing and really just able to get along with everyone.
Yeah.
But hearing you say that, I think it's often for people who feel that way, later on they maybe realize, like I have, it's more just maybe it's a lack of strong self-identity, or you have self-identity but you're not confident in it yet to express it to the full extent that you want.
Yeah.
And so maybe social chameleon is not a flex, it's more like you just haven't grown into the strong identity that you want to have.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I think I used to try too much to be a social chameleon, and to a point where it really took a lot out of me. I realized that trying to please everyone means you're not pleasing yourself at the end of the day. Like if you want to be everyone's friend, then you're not being a friend to yourself, because it's just really hard to match everyone's like need for friendship. Do you consider yourself an introvert versus an extrovert?
There's like, most people are somewhere in the middle, right, of the spectrum. Not everyone's fully extrovert. Most people aren't like fully introvert. I think I am an introverted extrovert at this point in my life. I like being social, but I am also like just naturally very introverted. But I only like being social in like certain contexts. Whoa.
Oh.
Hostage vibes.
We'll just continue like this.
The light just shut off. Yeah, I guess we'll just continue. But I'm definitely more of an introvert. Sometimes I like to be extroverted, but I'd say that's like 20% of the time.
So you're considering yourself an introverted extrovert?
Yeah, but if I just said it's like 80-20, so maybe that just means I'm an introvert. Yeah.
I think I'm an extroverted introvert. Because I can present very well as an extrovert, and I like in social situations try to. A lot of the times I'm like hyper stressed on the inside, and sometimes I don't want to be out and talking, but I put myself in situations to, socialize.
Oh wait, yeah, no, wait, you're right. Yeah, I had it mixed up. I'm that.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
Okay.
I am an extroverted introvert.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the adjective is extroverted.
Yeah.
The noun is introverted. For our grammar lesson today. Sponsored by Grammarly.
I wish.
Please.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your segment.
Thanks for having me. Please comment how much you love me if you love me and are still listening in the episode.
For most people, I feel like we come into contact with people all the time, and we maybe meet people through different circumstances. And the biggest thing that I've noticed is, as an adult, you really have to be present, but you actually have to take the lead on converting a potential connection to an actual friendship by doing that follow-up method that I was talking about. Like DMing them, being like, hey, you're pretty cool, like let's get coffee. And I feel like that comes with also a lot of need to learn how to be rejected, because sometimes people just don't respond to that, or people just don't want to get coffee, which is fine. But social networking is all about being present in the moment when you're with someone, but also being present when you're not with them. And that's something that I need to learn, because I've been really bad historically with keeping up with friends, especially if they're not in the same location as me. And I feel like I have no trouble like following up with someone if I just met them and I'm in the present wanting to grab coffee with them. But then when it comes time to longer term friendships and childhood friends, I have such difficulty picking up my phone and texting them, because maybe they just don't cross my... I'm very like present focused, if that makes sense, present and future focused, that sometimes I forget about the past. So that's one thing that I've been trying to work on with regards to being a friend. I know sometimes I'm not as good at keeping up, but I definitely think there is amount of like give and take when it comes to being a friend, and you really, really got to give that effort and give that time that as an adult there's less forgiveness on. But if I were to evaluate my friend group from my early 20s to now, my, I guess, late 20s. I think in my early 20s, my friends and my friendships were very much more homogenous. Like I wanted to be around people that were very similar to me and people that I felt quote unquote comfortable with. It felt like more of a comfort circle and like a bubble of people that I felt like made me feel safe. But it was very, very homogenous. People around the same age, people in the same line of work, people who kind of came from similar situations. And nowadays I feel like my friends are scattered across different industries. Like I have friends who are like in fashion now and creating their own tech startups, like full-time artists, and just doing really cool things. And I feel like it's just more diverse. I definitely think there's merits to that, because friends are like an avenue to experiencing the world and experiencing life and different things like that. And so I think it's really important to have more variety in your friends. I feel like friends are also a source of inspiration, so there's that as well. But that is kind of a segue into the next topic, which is why I think friends are really, really important, especially in your 20s. The first is, I think friends have a lot of influence over who you are. And that's true regardless of what age you are. I feel like kids kind of start being and acting the same way that their friends are. But I do think friends in your 20s really, really shape what decisions you make and the way you spend your time and how motivated and inspired you are. And there's a lot of life lessons that you also learn from friends in your 20s. I think it's because everyone's going through the same thing. And so if one person has a realization, they'd want to share it with other people. There's a lot of comfort in growing together. And I think that togetherness is what results in all the influence and impact that you have on each other. But I think the second thing is there's a comfort element of friendships that doesn't necessarily mean that your friends have to be exactly like you, but it does mean that I think friends can provide a level of comfort and safety for you. So recently, my college friend group rekindled our friendship which kind of came out of nowhere because we've all just been living in different places in the last couple of years after graduating. And so our friendship kind of died down. But in the last year-ish, we all kind of moved to the same place and started hanging out more. And then we went on a few trips together. And I realized that they're my comfort friends because they make me feel safe and at home. And they remind me of this level of comfort that I had in college that kind of dissipated when I became an adult. I think comfort friends are so valuable because they make you feel comfort. And I don't know what better way to describe it, but there is just some level of reassurance and love and care that you can feel with friends who are your comfort friends. But that reminded me of one thing, which is friendships come in cycles. And so just because someone or some group of people aren't your friends in the current moment anymore doesn't mean they won't make their way back to your life. And I think I read somewhere about like when you hit your 30s or like right before your 30s, you see this wave of friends from your past kind of resurge in your life. I already start feeling it with certain friends. And it's really interesting because you can probably go through a gap or a huge gap of time where things change in your life and all these different life circumstances start shifting. And then all of a sudden you're friends again with someone that knew you when you were like 18 years old, like crying about a boy. And I think actually those friends that come back into your life are the friends that you know will be lifelong friends, because after many, many changes and a series and many seasons and a series of just shifts in life, if you can still rekindle your friendship, I feel like that is such a green flag and such a good sign. I haven't had that a lot. I think I have a few from childhood, not that many, but definitely this college friend group took me by surprise, and I'm so thankful for them. And if they're watching and listening, because I know one of you guys at least listens to my podcast, I love you guys too. I feel like I've mentioned so many friends throughout this video, and I love each and every one of you who are watching. So yeah, the third thing I wanted to say with regards to how important friends are, I don't know what the right way to phrase this is, because I think this isn't the best way to look at friends in particular, but I do think there is a level of mobility that is important when it comes to looking at friends too, because some friends are just able to help you in ways that may not be financial, but in other ways, like they might help you talk about your career and kind of guide you in the right direction, or they might have resources or know people that can help you go towards something you want to. I think this is a touchy subject because everyone has their differing opinions on like social networking, but I do think there is an element now in your 20s and as an adult of having like this aspect of mobility that friends can help you with. And I think this comes from having friends from different walks of life, and sometimes friends that are just slightly older that can be more of a mentor figure rather than just like a peer figure. Peer, P-E-E-R, peer figure. Social networking has an interesting connotation, which I want to get into, but I think those are like the three things that are very important with friends and what they help you with as you enter adulthood. The last thing I do want to say though is quality over quantity, because when I first moved to New York, I thought that having as many friends as possible would be the most amazing thing ever, and it would just be so great to just know as many people as possible. I would literally hold these like parties on my roof when I lived with my friend Kyle, and we would invite hundreds of people, not hundreds, but like over 100 people. Like there would be 80, 90, 100 people on the guest list. And I would literally invite like everyone and their mothers, because I thought that was the way that you should be. Like you should just be friendly and social. And if I had met someone the week before a party, I would just be like, hey, just come to my party. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, but I realized that sort of interaction actually doesn't cultivate the types of friendships you might want. Because for me, I never ended up actually forming long-standing friendships with a lot of those people. I feel like I would just see them at that one party and then that would be it. Also had this weird sense of like, oh, if I meet so many people this weekend from this one thing and I invite them all to this other thing, I'm kind of like batching all those coffee chats into this one day where I could just catch up with each of them at my party. But as a host, like that's not what you're doing. Like you don't have time to catch up with everyone. And so I think that was a very flawed way of perceiving things. And I definitely realized that quality is way more important than quantity. It's good to know a lot of people, but when it puts pressure on your existing relationships and friendships, it makes you take away your energy that you can give to your current friends that you want to prioritize. I think there's like no value in that. And I think the reason I valued quantity at that stage in life was because I wanted to fill this void of not having been the popular kid, like elementary school, middle school, and high school. I think in college, I got a taste of what it felt like to be more social because I really put myself out there and tried to I literally go up to anyone and just be like, hey, I'm Sarah, let's be friends. And everyone was so receptive. As an adult, that I don't think that's always the case, but I felt like I wanted to fill this void of feeling like people liked me. And that's like a validation and security aspect that I've had to like grow out of. But in my early 20s, I felt like I just needed to be validated by having a lot of friends. But I realized when I surrounded myself with a lot of people that these weren't necessarily the people that cared about me. I think in the last couple of years, I really realized the people that do care about me. But yeah, I used to be like, oh, you're a human, let's be friends. As an adult though, I think the concept of being popular is very, very watered down because no one actually cares anymore. Maybe some people care, but I think it's more of a younger mindset to have, to crave the desire of, or to crave the idea of popularity. Although I do think nowadays, maybe because I live in a big city like New York, being popular is kind of replaced by being well networked. Like the term well networked, I feel like is thrown around a lot more. So I think that's a good segue into networking friends and how to navigate that. I think that concept of networking friends and social networking is just so new to a lot of people when you enter adulthood. So this is kind of traumatizing for me exiting college because in college you don't really get that much exposure to networking. I just think social networking didn't exist as explicitly as it does when you're an adult. So the first time that I heard about social networking or had like a semi semblance of what it was in freshman year of college. I feel like the concept of social networking or someone being very networky was that they would just try to hang out with cooler, more popular people to kind of climb the social ladder that way. But it was definitely not as much about career and finances as I realized it is now as an adult. But ever since graduating, I've realized this new sense in like a social space of making friends with people for purely opportunistic benefits. And a lot of the times it stems from wanting to move up in your career or wanting to earn more money or things like that. And for the longest time, I think I had a weird taste in my mouth about that sort of relationship because I had never been taught to like network that way and never been taught to be intentional, I guess, with like the signals I put out to people, the types of people I hang out around. But I feel it a lot nowadays in the way that sometimes people will try to engage with me because they're aware that I'm a YouTuber. And I felt weird about it for a really, really long time until I realized that a lot of friendships are transactional, whether it's like emotional benefit or time benefit or some other benefit. So I feel like social networking is very natural and like understandable. However, my caveat is I really, really don't like it when I notice that people only care about you for a specific reason. That is networking for their own personal gain, because any friendship is like a two-way street. Like you got to give to receive. And I think that's what social networking is you give to receive. But the times that I've felt very off-put by social networking is when I know someone knows that I'm like do social media, for example, and that's the only thing that they care about. And it's very clear that that's the only value they see in me. And that's the only thing they want to talk to me about. I've had friends or I've met people before where it's so clear that they only want to ask me about my content creation, how much money I make, content creation advice, tips, things like that. And then no regard for anything about me, my interests, who I am, what I do, where I come from, any of that. And I think that's the times where I'm really off put by social networking. It's when I sense that someone wants to befriend me for a specific selfish reason, if that makes sense. And I think it gets harder and harder the older you get, because the more you improve in life and the more knowledge and wisdom you gain, the more that people pick up on that too, and that they know there's something to gain out of you. And so it's harder and harder to decipher which types of people or what people want from you, what type of friend they see you as. I've definitely grappled sometimes with the fact that I've noticed sometimes people will just want to be friends with me just to learn more about social media. At the end of the day, I feel like I can pick up on that. I'm thankful that most of my friends aren't that way, but there have been one-off situations where I kind of felt like I needed to cut someone out because I felt like they were just purely wanting me for personal gain. I think the unfortunate part of life is that a lot of opportunities do come out of knowing people. And so I don't think it's bad in any way to social network, because I personally nowadays do try to like meet people if I think they're interesting. But I feel like I try to root my conversations and interest in them also in them as people and not just seeing them as currency, if that makes sense. And I feel like developing friendships in your adulthood is so important to be caring and mindful of other people. I think I shied away from it for a very long time because I didn't have a good understanding of what it is. But I think there's nothing wrong as long as you actually care about the person or make them feel cared for. Like, I just don't like the negative feelings of bitterness that you'll get when you know that someone's not working with you for that specific purpose. But anyways, all in all, I think this video was just a little bit more of a ramble on friendships and making friends as an adult. The things I've learned is that, one, it is just so hard because there's so many more factors and you just don't get friendships for free. Time is a limited resource and everyone kind of is spread thin between all these different things. But I think because of that, it's clear to see who actually cares about you, because those are the people that are willing to make time for you and be your friend and just be present with you. But it's so important to just find friends that resonate with you and that you resonate with and value quality over quantity. And that's something that has taken a long time for me to learn. But with growing older and having less and less energy to do things and party and things like that, I think it's really valuable to also realize that as you get older, things change and there's all these situational life changes that happen, like having kids and moving to new neighborhoods and picking up new hobbies that will bring friends. I think my whole motto with making friends is just to be open and receptive if new friends and new opportunities come into my life where I feel like a new connection can be made. I try nowadays not to force making friends, but I also think I've just been more mindful for my capacity to take on friends and prioritize the friendships that I find most meaningful. So that is today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. I hope some of this resonated with you all, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bloopers.
It's bloopers. How have you found making friends in your 20s, and how have you made your friends in your 20s?
Why are you asking me? I don't have friends.
I'm your only friend.
My friend is Sarah and then Moose, and that's pretty much it.
That's such a lie.